Welcome to the Employer Content Show, part of the Town Insight series brought to you by HireWell and Before You Apply. I'm James Hornick. Joining me is my co-host from Before You Apply. I did not come up with a snappy nickname this week because we have enough going on. Nate Guggia.
Hey, bud. Good to see you.
So this is people don't even realize how special this show is. This is a show where we decided we're just not going live anymore because we just don't care. Yeah, so for the entire inception of this show, we were doing a live show via LinkedIn and a bunch of other platforms we're hooked up to, and then we would take that show and put on YouTube and everywhere else. We're just going to do on Zoom, and if we make mistakes, you're never going to know because Nia's going to cut them all out for us. It'll be perfect. So it's wonderful.
But, it's just I don't know. It's freer. It's great.
Yeah. Well, they also the thing was for the longest time, it was the only way to really reach 100% of your network. It would pop up on everyone's notifications if you went live on something. You couldn't do like a full length video on LinkedIn otherwise. Like you can only do a 10-minute video. So like I like having stuff that was native to LinkedIn, then we could post to other places. But as we found out is StreamYard, the platform we use, they launched a feature where you can go live with a pre-recorded video. So I'm like, sure. I actually think it'll be better just because I think, you can improve on the small mistakes and stuff you make, but more importantly, I think I'll send it live, a recorded version. So if you're watching this now, we're not actually live. This is, but I think I could actually be in the comments actually interacting with people because that's impossible to do that while you and I are having a conversation. Now I'll be able to actually like park in the comments, talk with people, reply to them as if we're live. So if you have questions out there, please reply because Nate and I are listening right now. I said that a week ago or whatever. So anyways, and the other thing is we don't even really have a title for today's show. So it was something along the lines of like why small companies kick ass and big companies are awful when it comes to content or something like that. I don't know.
It's how they can. I think, in our conversation with Mitch Sullivan, we realized, or we started talking about an advantage that smaller companies can have over larger, more like legacy brands, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they can do things faster and scrappier and like more in line with the stuff that we do.
Yeah.
So we're like, we should just do a full show on that. So
yeah. So basically we'll come up with a final title when we post it, but you're listening to a show that's vaguely about the difference between large and small companies when it comes to the content. And I actually have a good personal example about user-generated content and why small companies definitely have the advantage when it comes to hiring because large companies are bloated and do stupid things that large companies do. But anyways.
Yep.
I got a bunch of places I could start, I guess. I have some notes here. Is there anything you wanted to kick it off with though? Or anything you wanted to mention to lead the convo?
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with this. I had a call this morning actually with someone who runs TA at like a 50-person startup right now. They're growing really fast. They're going to double to 100 in a couple months. But she had previously come from LinkedIn. She worked at LinkedIn for like 7 years prior. So completely different environment. And what she was telling me was they would create content there. It would take so long to get published that by the time that it was actually published, it was already out of date.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I can, I think there's a couple things there because look at it this way, like how many times have we've been doing this show a little over a year and a couple months. Yeah. Like all the stuff we did in the first 6 months of the show is like completely irrelevant now.
Oh my, okay. It's funny. I've been looking through our library.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we both have like tons of clips that are just backlogged. I was looking through some of the old ones because I wanted to post one. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This was
it's all completely, like, I think there's a relevancy factor of stuff that's happening. I don't mean just like social commentary, but things that are more top of mind. Like people, I don't think they have a perspective of how quickly, like whether it's what's exciting or compelling, put in a company's perspective of hiring, like what's compelling in the group or team you're working on, or what cool initiatives you have going on right now in the organization that are worth talking about. But like the selling points that makes a candidate get excited to come join your company, like those change fairly quickly as like new priorities are happening in the organization. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, high level, I mean, I think the point from when we were having that conversation with Mitch is that like small companies have maybe the biggest need for, like, they have to get their name out for the first time a lot of the time, right? But they don't have the budget, and larger companies like have potentially all the budget in the world, but they have all these layers of disconnection, between just, they have all this process, they have all these guardrails, which I'd love to talk about guardrails for a minute, that make it just impossible for good, relevant, recent branding or recruitment marketing things to happen, and it makes employee generated content probably completely impossible in larger orgs. And it's just kind of funny that I know Mitch's perspective was like they should be able to hire advertising firms, which I'd agree with. I'd like to see it though. You know what I mean? Like I don't have any good examples of knowing if it would work for sure, just because I don't think anything works until I've actually like seen like a use case for it. I think larger companies that have a brand advantage, it's because it integrates well with their actual like corporate brand to begin with. Like you mentioned, like Patagonia as an example, what I mean? Like that they have a good employer brand because they have a good brand, you know
Definitely,
what I mean?
right.
I've never seen anything specific to it that's about like what they're hiring for or anything like that. So anyways, why don't I talk about, and you can jump in here anytime. I posted this on LinkedIn. Side note, content hack. If you're ever like prepping for a live show, if you're out there listening and you're like, how do I actually prep for some sort of podcast or something else like that? Just use write a post or blog post for like something on LinkedIn or your blog, and just put your entire show notes in a post, and it'll help you collect your thoughts and get something else to talk about. And a lot of times you'll get like opposing views and opposing feedback or things you missed. And then you crowdsourced. The comments are basically crowdsourcing and make your show more complete, which is basically what I did today because I had a thought. So let's also kind of recap briefly to our backgrounds as it relates to this. I'm not an employer brand, you are. But for HireWell, because like I have an interest in this stuff because we're kind of in the hiring industry, so I'd like to provide value to my clients. But we internally have an employer, like what we do also doubles as that. So it's something that like we've had a lot of success hiring this year because of our content initiatives, which clearly kind of falls under this. So to give some context, at the beginning of the year, we were roughly 50 recruiters. We've made 26 hires as of today. So we're 76, 75 people. So 50% increase in our headcount. And it's extremely, extremely, extremely hard to hire recruiters right now for anybody. And ask anybody in recruiting, like it's a pain in the ass to try to hire recruiters internally or I know recruiting firms, and we're one of them, they're turning down business, which is like baffling to me, right?
Yeah.
So I put that in the fact because, us hiring that many people as a size of our firm is a pretty big achievement, which we're very proud of. And there's a lot of things that go into it. So we had to get a lot of people kind of on board. We have a lot of different service lines. So recruiters have backgrounds in sales or marketing or tech. Like we have all those areas. So it makes it easier. We have things we do differently in our business model. You get to work with me. I'm cool as shit. So a lot of good things working for us here. But it's easier because people know who the hell we are, like full stop. We didn't have this, we didn't have any kind of brand probably 4 years ago. Like we had word of mouth, but like beyond that, no one knew us. And almost every interview, not everyone, but majority of people who started either heard about us because of the content we do, or they interview with us, they looked into us more, and they really like kind of the stuff that we did because it was very different than everyone else does. So I wanted to give that just like my background example of why, and I'll give out kind of all of our tips here, but like the first thing, because let's relate it back to the higher topic, like large companies, because this is something I hear a lot in like networking conversations with different people when they say the reason why we can't do what you guys do is because we have guardrails.
Yeah.
We have things in place. Everyone is so friggin' worried about the rogue employee.
Yeah.
Like the rogue employee who like posts some shit on social that wrecks your brand. You know what I mean? How do we prevent that? How do we make sure that never happens? We can't let employees just post whatever they want to. And the larger the company is, the more they worry about this shit. Like this is why large companies have very stringent policies and small companies don't, because they haven't even thought of this yet. But I think the whole idea is just absurd. Any case of employee that went really rogue, you know what I mean? That really blew things up, that like a whistleblower, you know what I mean? Like those organizations that like leak stuff, like they're going to violate whatever friggin' policy you have. You know what I mean? It's not like any worst case scenario of like someone going off the rails and damaging your brand is violating that policy anyway. You know what I mean? It's not like as soon as you create a policy that's stringent and you need to get marketing to approve the message or someone else, like you're just demotivating anyone to do any of this shit if you're trying to get your employees involved.
If you look at PR nightmares,
yeah,
or anything that's been controversial, it's always come from a CEO or a founder.
Yeah,
it's like it really hasn't come from like an employee like going off the rails. And the other thing is like employees have complete freedom to post whatever they want on their personal profiles on social platforms.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about somebody who already has the freedom to do that,
yeah.
actually doing that, and having it come back onto the company.
Yeah.
It's like, right. The whole thing like doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's just, it's like a bad, it's like in trading terms, because as you know, I'm a derivatives trader as well in my other life. Yeah. It's tail risk. Like everyone's worried about the worst case scenario, but like the worst case scenario, one is it's extremely unlikely, but two, it wouldn't matter what guardrails you put in place anyway, because it's not going to prevent that. You know,
right, it's not.
Someone spouts off some racist shit, you know, whatever, or they give away trade secrets or they spill insider secrets like that. Like they have an agenda against you, and whatever stupid rules you put in place is not going to stop that. So really, you're talking about minor stuff. You're talking about someone who phrased something the wrong way, or, you know, post something like, you're talking about minor shit. And like, that's stuff that like you can just correct after the fact because no one's going to care. If you lose a client over some minor shit, like chances are they were jackass anyway. You know what I mean? Like there's, I just think there's versus like the amount you have to gain by kind of, you know, just letting people kind of the leeway to do whatever they, you know, to be more kind of open with it, be more creative and have a voice, you know what I mean? Like it provides a lot. So the thing I proposed, I was in, I'll give them a shout out. So great organization here in Chicago that we got involved in recently, Sales Assembly, which they're expanding kind of around the country. So it's wonderful organization. Like if you're involved in kind of the sales competency, like I highly recommend you checking them out. But there's a leadership call every Thursday. And, you know, we talk about, you know, we talk about how hard hiring is. We talk about COVID, like all the topics everyone else talks about, like these are the things that come up, but there's a lot of more kind of sales specific things and things leadership. One of the things that came up in one of our recent calls was how like everyone wants to do more of this, but there might be at companies where people are worried about like the guardrail thing. You know what I mean? Like, how do you make sure you don't have the rogue employee? And one of the things I mentioned is in one of those calls is, besides what I said is it's overstated, having regular, like instead of make it a conversation, make it a regular thing you do as an organization to have brainstorming sessions, right? So anyone at HireWell that wants to get involved in content, like we just ask, hey, just join our brainstorming session every other week, right? We just, all we do is we talk about like the different initiatives and stuff we have. We talk about what ideas everyone, like what are your clients seeing, what's happening out in the market, what job seekers are talking about. So you start generating ideas, but on the other hand, you start also making impact on people and getting them to kind of think, okay, these are the topics that are relevant. These are the takes that are correct. You know what I mean? We're not telling people how to think, but once everyone else kind of sees like the direction that you're setting in terms of like what adds value to our message and what's going to help us kind of achieve either our business or hiring objectives, people start thinking kind of along those lines. And then you start brainstorming further. Okay, what platform should we put this on? How can we format it? It's more of a proactive conversational way of adding value around, you know, like not guardrails, but more just kind of getting everyone to kind of view like what your vision is of what content should look like, without making things, it makes things more empowering versus making things demoralizing. So, and I think if you do that, like you're a lot of the way there. So that basically takes most of the concerns you should have off the table once you actually see how it works in practice. But I don't know. I digress.
Okay. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to be an observer here, act as the observer. One of the reasons I would say actually, well, there's two reasons I think your stuff, HireWell stuff works so well. One is the level of activity that you now have. First, it was you. Yeah. And I mean, it was, right?
Yeah. Well, someone has to lead the way, I guess. Like you do need someone to do it, but then you want to get as many other people involved as you can.
Right. Yeah. And then slowly you would see some other team members like starting to pop up. And now at this point, there's so much activity coming from one company that you just see the name Hirewell in your feed every single day. Like it just happens, right? So there's that. So there's just like, oh, the brand recognition. But couple that with the fact that you all have actual opinions about the work that you're doing, which is a completely different thing and something that few companies actually have. And if they do have them, they're too afraid to put them out there publicly. And so you guys have this combination of activity, of volume, combined with a clear take on your industry that like elevates you as like true subject matter experts. So when somebody, I would imagine when somebody does need the services that you provide, they already know over days or weeks or months of seeing your stuff pop up and reading your stuff, going like, okay, they know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
It's rare. I wish it wasn't so rare.
I mean, it was largely by when we started this stuff like that. My stated goal was I wanted Hirewell to be the, like when someone thinks recruiting, I wanted to be the first thing that pops into people's minds, you know?
Yeah.
And so it takes a level of, and that's, I guess, taking this back to large versus small, like I think that's another challenge large organizations have is they don't feel comfortable having an opinion.
Right.
You know, like they feel like the larger the organization is, the more they feel like they have to not upset anybody, not offend everyone. They can't go against the grain ever. They can't go outside the lines. They have to be easily agreeable. You know what I mean? And I think I said this to you like not too long ago, is like, I don't think anything we do is controversial, edgy. This is just how I talk in real life. And I think that everyone else at these brands that have everything sanitized, like they don't sound like that. No one at their firm sounds like that, but they somehow agreed that, you know, let's just tone everything down to a point where, you know, no one even notices is what ends up happening, you know? So, but like every conversation like that you have with other people in your life, like that's how you should sound when you're talking about what it's like to work with you. Cause that's really what it's like to work with you, you know?
Yeah, there's like this other thing too, is like if we focus, you know, if we're focusing on content as it applies to hiring, to recruiting, companies really struggle with what to say, how to actually do it, how to put it out there, and then how to do it at scale.
Yeah.
So going back to like, you know, that example I gave at the beginning, what happens in our space is so much overthinking will be applied to like what needs to go out into the world. And so a lot of like time and energy and resources will be invested in this to get it polished so it fits into this neat, nice little safe box. And then something will go out into the world. And it's so uneventful that
nobody cares.
Nobody cares. But the realities of hiring, especially, I think much more than sales, which like you talked about at the beginning, is that things are changing so fast that it's really like this dynamic content that keeps that maintains the relevancy.
We need these positions filled in 30 to 60 days. And guess what? 30 to 60 days, like we're going to have completely different shit to talk about. Whereas
that's right.
Sales teams can sell on the same shit all year. So if this marketing program doesn't work, we'll make a new one. You don't lose anything, but whatever you're doing to try to sell these positions doesn't work, like you're screwed. Like once positions go unfilled for a certain amount of time, like then you're behind and then that jams everything up the organization's doing. So it has to be a much more iterative process. And that's why just thinking more quickly, but a little more lo-fi and less processed is so necessary when it comes to hiring, because you don't have the time to check every box and get every approval and do everything professional, like high quality, professionally shot video and stuff like that. Like you need stuff that you can make happen quickly.
Yeah. And this idea of like, you know, I posted about this today, but like this whole like brand alignment messaging, everything has to be like lined up. Otherwise people are going to be like confused and questioning you and stuff. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't work that way. but
Yeah.
there is this like thinking that
Mhm.
like, oh, if everything isn't fully consistent and aligned, people are going to think we're just like a total mess. And it's like, no,
or you could just have a bunch of videos where you and your team are having fun and having fun conversations with each other, and that works. Just go with that. Like,
I mean, seriously, like you guys are, I mean, I don't want to, I hate to keep like blowing you up here, but I mean, some of the stuff that you just like experiment with and test out, like the outtake video that you did was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I seriously would want to work for you just because you did that video, because it just like, it showed your personality and was like, it gave more of a look inside than if you spent $50,000 designing some career site with like EVPs and bullshit like that.
Yeah.
This with like one simple
that no one's going to see. I've said like social media, because we're talking about social media for most of this, right? That's what's going to drive a lot of your like employer brand or you know, whatever. Like, it's supposed to be fun. The entire purpose of social media was people to like fuck around and enjoy themselves, you know. Even if it's LinkedIn, like no one goes to LinkedIn because they feel like being serious. Like some of the best stuff that blows up on LinkedIn, and like a lot of times it's like someone's TikTok video they put over, or some meme that like came from some other site. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, we're still human. And I think that I do want to mention this only because it kind of relates back to it's another kind of like, I put this in the post I had today. We were kind of talking about the same subject, but just to let you know kind of what success looks like with this stuff. So we do this once a quarter because we don't want to overdo it, where we have literally every person in the company post that we're hiring. So it's whatever they want to say, however they want to say it. But we encourage people. There's cash prizes for whoever votes on the best ones. But we promote creativity. So we urge everyone to do a video and just like have fun with it. So the top 5 videos from this time, so I'll try to describe them. I'll try to link them when this thing eventually goes live. So Lewis, he basically did a Bears Superfans parody where he was talking about our hiring as the coach, like that guy.
Oh, no way, really?
So he did that. Emily did a say any. That was actually clips from the movie where she superimposed herself over Cusack, like a say anything, holding up the, that was good. Maggie knocked out she did a Hot Ones edition, so that show with the hot wings.
Yeah.
She was trying to answer questions about like we couldn't even get to the questions because the wings are so hot. Ryan took a clip from her show that she runs every Wednesday where she asked a different recruiter each week, like speed round of questions, and one of them is always, what do you like most about Hirewell? And everyone always says the people, and it was 20 people in a row saying like the people every single time. And then Espressa did one where I'm still trying to figure this one out. It was one of those come join us in like at resorts, you know what I mean, where the resort staff is like, then she put herself at the end, come join us at Hirewell. So those are just some examples. Like they just made this shit up on their own. They did it on their own time, you know, whatever. And we got 91 applicants in under a week.
That's crazy.
How many applicants does your crappy employer value, that the EVP that you spent 50 grand on get you? 0.
This is the thing here where for a while, I think it's like, I think the conversation is starting to fade a little bit generally in the industry about employee generated content in like what people thought it was. They thought it was like, you know, you buy an app or you buy a piece of technology and then your employees can record selfie videos talking about like how much they love your company, whatever. And then those get shared out on social, or they go on your career site or whatever. And like, I've talked to enough companies now who have like tried that, who have said, it doesn't work. Employees don't care enough to create content. And when they do, what we get back is unusable. And it just ends up being too much work. And I've actually talked to some of the companies who have that technology who are trying to pivot out of it because they're like, we thought people would care. It seems like an obvious, but they don't. And it's not about that. It's about creating this culture that rallies around content and actually believes in it. And then having these processes to allow it to happen. And like, that's so different. So like, yes, the outcome, we could call it employee generated content, but the way to go about it is so completely different.
Well, it's also because like tools like that, like you don't need any of those damn tools.
You
That's the
don't
thing.
need
It's
them.
that's I'm like the big company thinking. If you buy some complex suite of products, that'll make the whole thing easier, but it really doesn't, because you
Well,
can't. You still have to get people to want it. Which if you've got all these like processes around guardrails in place, like no one's going to want to do it. You know?
well, and that's why and this, like, again, this thinking about around budget,
Yeah.
like you and I don't have any budget to do
No.
this.
No.
But
I have Nia. That's our entire marketing budget
sure.
is Nia.
Yeah. So like, let's say there's not,
What
it's not zero, but
yeah, what tools do we have besides that? Well, how much does the script cost per month?
right. We use a couple like simple video editing tools, and
I got a new camera. That was $80.
oh yeah, you did. But there's that. And so it's like, I was thinking about smaller companies. So let's just like, we'll focus on like employer branding, for example, like, or for right now. And like with smaller companies, again, I've said this 100 times, but it's like employer branding falls on the lap of talent acquisition. It is like a head of talent, or even like a recruiter who is like trying to hire people, who is also thinking about employer branding and trying to figure out like, how do we do this? And so, and that person thinks that the only way for them to compete with the leaders in their category or the big brands that might be like hoovering up all the talent is to compete on brand. And actually, I don't think that's true. I think that they can compete on distributing information and personality. And like now, that's easier to do than ever. And the fact that employer branding is such a, I don't know, neglected industry. The fact that like nobody knows how to do it right. Very few companies are actually doing it right. Larger companies with just bigger, more recognizable logos can just get away with shitty processes, because if a candidate has like 2 choices off the top, they're going to go with a logo that is recognizable in their mind, because to them that equals cred. But if they were to able to like judge based off of information, there's a chance that smaller companies who are providing the right information combined with personality could actually emerge, and they can level the playing field.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that a lot, like in the tech sector, there's always, well, I hate to say it as not branding, but I don't think that candidates are, in general, job seekers are attracted to big, well-known companies because they're big and well-known anymore, and I think that what you were saying about people trying to focusing just on making their brand, I agree that it's kind of it's a mistake. It comes back to what you and I have talked about in the past. Like, people want to work with like good leaders and good people who they agree with their vision. They get feeling like they get to know them, and I think that secondary to that, they also want to work with coworkers that are cool as shit. If you can get those 2 things out there, like, you don't need anything else,
So I don't think you do either. I really don't.
It really is that simple. I think that in terms of getting more people involved, I think it is, it's like there's one more step I kind of left out here, because I think you have to create like a community or a vibe that people want to kind of get involved in this stuff. Part of it is having like regularly scheduled meetings that everyone's invited to. Everyone's allowed to have a voice, like, I mentioned that kind of we do. So you need that. You need a leader or 2 to lead the way. You know what I mean? So someone's actually shown this is what we do. That way people can see, okay, this works. Third thing, you have to pay them.
Yeah.
It's work. Like, it's simple as, like, it doesn't be anything crazy, but like, we give out spot bonuses for people who actually, so when people create like more video content on different subjects and stuff, you'll see like they got paid for that. There has to be a difference between the employees who go the extra mile and those who don't. And it's totally okay if people don't want to get involved. You know what I mean? Like, we don't expect everyone in the company to get involved. Not everyone does. I know that'll never happen. But realistically, if you can get 20% of your company to care about this kind of stuff, great. But you still need to show them the money. That way they realize, because it's really, everyone's busy in our industry. Everyone's like, everyone in every industry, people are slammed. So whenever you talk about this stuff, you're talking about people doing extra work.
Yeah.
And if that's optional, which you want it to be optional, because if you make it compulsory, then everyone's going to hate it. You know what I mean? So you have to make it optional. But if you make it optional, then that means you got to throw a little cash into it. So, which is fine, because all the money you save by not spending insane money on a stupid employer value proposition that no one's going to care about, just throw that towards your employees. Win-win.
When I first started doing this, when I was with job portraits, I think one of the reasons it worked so well was because it became part of my daily like job. Like it was me taking the time to put a post together, to post it on LinkedIn, to do all the things I was doing, you know, replying to my comments, you know, finding other things to engage in, things like that. Like that whole process, like that time spent, the entire company saw that as valuable, as like, okay, that's part of my job. That's what I should be spending time on. It wasn't something I had to do in my off hours or feel guilty about doing or anything like that. It was like everybody like wanted me to be doing that. And so I was getting paid to do it, which is completely different. So like, I totally agree with you. I want to go back to like, you know, tactically, like, what does this look like? I'm going to hammer this fucking home until like, I don't know. I don't know for how long, but it's just like the value of your people or somebody at your company talking about their industry at like a deep level is like, the value is so high that I can't overstate it.
Yeah, I agree.
I just can't. I'm like, I just like, people need to understand that you know your shit at a deeper level than anybody else in your industry. And if you can communicate that across enough on a consistent basis, you'll win at this thing.
Literally every single person that you follow in the business world of any social media is that person. Chances are you only know about whatever company they work at because of them, you know?
So the thing is like, if I'm put on the spot and somebody asks me, okay, who are the companies who are doing this well? I can only think of two: you, Hire Well, and Refine Labs.
Yeah. We talked about Gravy before. I think they do pretty well with this still.
Dude, I haven't been following their stuff for a while, but okay, big Gravy.
Casey's been popping. I've been noticing him, and I think they still do pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not many.
It's not many.
It's not many. I think it's more doable than people realize. I hope no one in recruiting ever realizes it, but I don't know. But I think that getting back to kind of the point of the show, I think that the last thing I wanted to mention, I think back to talking about kind of big companies, is that along with the bloated aspect of all of this, there's always that feeling that it's someone else's job. You know what I mean? So marketing should do this, or employer brand should do this, as opposed to like, you know, hiring managers and people getting involved. Because ultimately, when I put things down to our level, that's ultimately what's happens is a lot of people who run the divisions, you know what I mean, are the people who actually say, okay, we want to do more of this, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, I think the larger the org is, there's that compliance, the bullshit compliance part, but there's also that it's someone else's job, which is why I think this is never going to happen for any large org. But for small orgs, I don't know. Like I said, the fact that we've grown 50% this year in terms of headcount, and it's not only because of this, but it's definitely a large component. It's just that, you know, I don't understand the business case for not doing it.
I mean, it helps you do the two most important things that any company is trying to do. Hire the right people and make money.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. So.
You got anything else for this episode, for our first recorded episode? So we've been talking for, I don't know, I want to say 40 minutes. I can't tell because we didn't start right on the hour here, but
no, I'm good.
We'll see how much we cut out. So Mia's got her work. First time this work edited down to get rid of the dead spots, which I don't think there were any, because you and I know how to talk.
We talk a lot. No, this is good. This is fun. I like it.
All right. Well, cool. Everyone out there, it's a wrap for the Employer Content Show. If you want to hear more of what Nate and I have to say, you can view all of our episodes on HireWell Talent Insights, which is talentinsights.hirewell.com, where you can from there to subscribe to the HireWell channel on YouTube and the Talent Insights podcast on Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify. Nate, pleasure as always.
All right, bud. Good to see you.
Everyone out there, we'll see you soon.